Hello, everyone. We are into Chapter 6, Robyn Carr's What We Find. Okay. Maggie had no idea how long Sully had been up when she finally rolled out of bed at 7:30. On about 4 hours of sleep, she stumbled to the bathroom and purposely didn't look in the mirror, a little afraid she'd see Cal's brand on her. She started the shower and got in while it was still cold. Holy Mother of Pearl, what a night that was! He was an amazing lover, but also he was such a sweet, smart, funny man. Of course he had to be some strange duck who was taking 6 months off to do odd jobs in camp. He couldn't be some ordinary, stable, reliable person like a truck driver or forest ranger. But then, what type of man did she think she could have a comfortable fit with? Sergei, the Ukrainian artist, had been a disaster. Andrew, the doctor, should have worked. They had so many things in common. And it had been a worse disaster. Even running her own hands over her body as she sudsed up in the shower brought delicious tinglings from the night before, little shudders of aftershocks. When she was out of the shower, she braved it, looked in the mirror. Her cheeks were either flushed or chafed from Cal's beard. Her lips were rosy from hours of kissing, sometimes so wildly she could hardly catch her breath. She lost control more times than she could count, and she was pretty sure she bit him once. His fault, really. He could drive her so far into ecstasy she lost her bearings and became nothing more than a writhing body responding to a powerful force and lost all sense. She wondered if she just rocked and wailed in that little pop-up all the damn night. For all she knew, the other campers brought their folding chairs over to Cal's site and created an audience. At least it had been Sunday night, the weekend warriors gone, the population down. She put lotion on her face and some lip gloss, blew out her hair, and got dressed. She was going to have to think of what to say to Sully. She never faced that before, worry over explaining to her father. She'd had a fling or 6 at the crossing, and there was Andrew. She never explained him. She had just said that they were seeing each other and that they'd be staying in one of the cabins. Something about this was different. It was probably because he'd had a heart attack, she thought, or it could be because she hardly knew Calvert, the handsome, good-natured bum in Princess Mulster. Better go easy on Sully. Funny, this had never been an issue. Until she was out of pre-med, age 22, she'd been very careful with her behavior around Sully. He was so proud of her, she hadn't wanted to disappoint him. Then, that summer before med school, self-designated as an independent adult, she had a little summer romance at the crossing. He was a biology teacher on summer break, living in his RV for several weeks, studying the flora in the Rockies. And she flirted with him. He flirted with her. They were drawn by common interests and lust, and she stayed out all night a few times, cozy in his RV. Sully had said nothing at all. It was as if they'd come to the mutual understanding that it was time for her to lead her own adult life. Take responsibility for her actions without his guidance or interference. Silent acceptance. She found him on the porch with Frank, having coffee and a not very heart-healthy pastry. But she'd been out most of the night and had therefore relinquished the right to comment on his diet choice. She got a cup of coffee and sat down. "How'd you sleep, Sully?" "Slept like a rock. Didn't even hear you come in at 3:30. "That was subtle," she said, like she really needed Frank in on this. "Mail run yesterday brought in 4 packages, Sully said. "They're for through hikers, so it's starting. Cal's in the storeroom, moving things around and getting ready for some restocking, making room for the packages that are going to start coming in now. Hikers on the trail are moving this way now that the snowpack is melting. Oh, she sipped her coffee. I'll be in there working, but I'm taking it one step at a time. Some of those boxes weigh 40 pounds. I'm glad you're not doing that. You know more about the post office end of things than Cal. Can you go check and see if he's making sense of the storeroom? Looked like he was doing okay, but when did he get here? Around 6:30, I think. Show off, she thought. You give him a raise or something, she asked. Funny, Jackson is starting this afternoon. I'm going to use him Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, and then his sister Nikki Friday, Sunday, and Thursday. No extra help on Wednesdays. Sounds decent, doesn't it? Doesn't Tom usually show up on Wednesdays? For cleanup around the grounds, Sully said. That's going to get more important ripens. A few more weeks, and I'll be doing it mostly on my own. She wasn't so sure he'd ever be as active as he once was. It wasn't just the surgery. It was the surgery plus being 70. I'll go check on Cal, she said, taking her coffee with her to the storeroom. When hikers planned to take on one of the long trails like the Colorado or Continental Divide Trail, meticulous planning was required. They couldn't carry a lot of water with them. Water is heavy. They had to know precisely where they could get fresh water along the trail, and they had to try to plan strategic stopping points. They could camp along the trail for as many as 10 nights if there was plentiful water along the way. But they couldn't carry enough nourishment or changes of clothing for longer than that. They could plot their trek by towns and campgrounds like the Crossing. At the Crossing, they could get showers, washcloths, pick up parcels they'd mailed ahead, as well as packages sent to them by friends or family. They'd meet with other hikers, share news, drink a few beers, grill some burgers, and load up on protein. They'd charge their phones, check their email. They exchanged more than news. Sometimes they'd trade off equipment or supplies to both lighten their load and pick up items they needed. They often exchanged books. Sully had a shelf set aside for that. Long-distance hikers didn't care more than one book at a time. They'd also do some shopping for anything they'd use up, lost or forgotten. Batteries, first aid items, lighters for campfires, protein snacks, water purification kits. She walked into the storeroom where Cal was stacking boxes containing food and supply items on one side of the room and leaving some shelves empty to give their postal items more space. Sully said you were here at 6:30 this morning, she said. He turned toward her with a very large smile. His eyes were a little sleepy, sexy, and satisfied. He took her coffee cup out of her hand, placed it on the shelf, and pulled her closer. And I think your complexion has cleared up, she added. He kissed her long and lovingly. Yes, this sky was a little gift. She would try not to fantasize, spending every night of her life getting trimmed up like she had last night. I have to rent a cabin, he said when he released her. Oh, and why is that? I thought you liked the tent. I think we weakened the struts that hold up the sides last night, and I want to stretch out a little bit. How soon will you be checking in, sir? By this afternoon, he said. They have a bathroom, shower, etc., right? They do, but we're coming into our busy season, so I don't think a free cabin is in your future, even though I have a feeling I'd somehow benefit. His lips quirked in a superior smile. I'm capable of paying my way. Didn't I explain that? I wasn't sure whether to believe you, she explained. He cocked his head. I don't think you got enough sleep. You could thank me for melting your bones last night, but never mind. Let me play the gentleman. I'll thank you. I see your talent extends far beyond the operating room. You're a riot in bed. Thank you. I've never felt better. He laughed. God, you're blushing. I think it's whisker burn, she said. Even better, he said, laughing. Now, can you get me a cabin, or do I have to go through the boss? Oh, please don't, she begged. Bad enough that he heard me stumble to my room at 3:30. I need some time off after I finish in the storeroom and stocking shelves. I have a few errands, but since I'm going to town, want me to cook for you and Sully tonight? I'd like to. That would be very neighborly. Would you like to borrow a kitchen? Nah, I'll make do. But tell me about these hikers. On their way, it seems. When the parcels start coming, we know they're marching up the divide. They don't like to hit the Colorado border before the 1st of May, but they start sending stuff before they begin. Are there big groups of them? She shook her head. Very rarely. There might be a couple or a few together, but mostly individuals. Sometimes they meet along the way and begin to watch for each other. How many? He asked. How many hikers? Hundreds, but they're not all long-distance hikers. The number that will spend 6 months on the CDT are relatively few, but they all plot their own course. They might hike for a few days, or a few weeks, or maybe just through Colorado. Some get on the CDT on the Mexican border and head north. Some hit the trail as far away as Banff, so head south, and there's every possibility in between. All through summer, you'll see them. They get off the trail at different points. We have about 5 foot and cattle paths and a north-south road all converging here. They usually get off the trail just 5 miles north or south and march up the road. Every once in a while, some crazy fool comes down that footpath behind the house from the Hallelujah Trail, straight down from the Rockies. Hallelujah? He asked. It's a demanding trip around and down the peaks. It used to be called Dead Man's Trail, but that was bad for business. Then she smiled. Rock climbers love that area. I bet people get in trouble out there, he said. For the most part, it's inexperienced people who haven't prepared, who run into trouble. But there's always the random accident or illness. It's very isolated. Sometimes they sit for a long time until another hiker can get word to first responders, rangers, or fire and rescue. Occasionally, someone gets lost and search and rescue goes out. There's a lot of federal land out here. Fire stations, forest service, public land that's remote. Then there's wildfires, avalanches, floods, and the odd wildlife issues. I'm going to have to get out there pretty soon, he said, as soon as I'm sure I'll be warm. You've said that all along, she said. I'm going to hate that day, for obvious reasons. He grinned his wicked grin. That's very flattering, Maggie. That day is not coming too soon. Also for obvious reasons, he added. It would be kind of you to at least let me get tired of you. But Maggie, what if you never do? She just sighed. The one thing you always secretly hope for can become your biggest fear. Any special requests for dinner? He asked. She shook her head. Something very lean, please. Sully's eating a pastry. Maggie's cell phone, left at the house, was beeping with a message. Her primary attorney, Steve Rubin, asked that she call him. Her heart beat a little faster as she prayed. Please let it be news that the lawsuit is dropped. How are you doing, Maggie? How's your dad? He's good, Steve. What's up? Well, it looks like we're going to trial. It should be in about a month, maybe 2. Crap, she said. Crap, crap, crap. I don't see this as terrible news. In fact, it will look better for you if you win this one rather than settling. I know it's a little traumatic, but our case is looking strong. Are you still at your dad's? I am. I think you could manage without me now if you think it would appear better if I went back to work. Maggie, it makes no difference. The closing of your practice has no bearing on this case. And if your father is recovering from a heart attack and you're the only relative, you have a perfectly good reason to be on leave. Unless you're bored out of your wits or he's driving you nuts. And if you're uncomfortable there, relax and try to. And if you're comfortable there, relax and try to enjoy the time off. However, you have to feel good about yourself, and if working helps that, by all means, go back to work. I don't consider it risky, and neither do the many colleagues who have asked you to fill in for them. They haven't been emailing or calling, begging me to come back. I know the kind of blow this is to your confidence, but I'm sure your colleagues are leaving you alone to rest and tend to family matters. With any luck, we'll have this behind us at about the same time you feel comfortable leaving your dad. Just do what keeps you sane for right now. I'm not entirely sure I know what that is, she said, but she was thinking she could stand a couple more weeks near Cal. One day at a time, Maggie, he said. I'm going to need some of your time as we get ready for a trial. I'll need pre-trial conferences. I'm sure the plaintiffs will want to depose you, and I'll want to prep you before the trial begins. Call me in a few days and let me know if there are any changes in your work status. Sure, she said. Listen, it's not like this brought me to my knees, Steve. It's a combination of things, really. Mostly my dad, but Maggie, go a little easier on yourself. This kind of thing brings everyone to their knees, even those big, badass surgeons who didn't have a single additional stressor in their lives. Believe me, I know. I've worked with a great many of them. She sighed. My dad says I have high expectations of myself, she said, when in fact it was she who carried those expectations. Yes, I know. Uncomfortable, I know. And that's exactly what it takes to make a good surgeon. We'll talk soon. She sat at her dad's kitchen table for a half hour. When she went back to the store, she didn't mention the call to anyone. Cal settled into his cabin, the farthest one from the house, and Maggie was with him after their usual fire, then sneaked into her own bed in the middle of the night. The next night she got to bed a little earlier, but one of these days soon she was going to steal a whole night with Cal and not even blush about it. Cal's truck and compact pop-up trailer sat behind the cabin he rented, for which Sully would not take money. Since the days were a bit longer, the store was staying open a little later. Come summer, their hours would be sun up to sundown. On Wednesday, Tom Canada came to the grounds early to help with cleanup, groundskeeping, grass and shrub trimming, and trash hauling. Cal spent most of the day helping with that while Maggie put in her time at the store, restocking and cleaning. Sully was back and forth between the store and the grounds, giving advice, trying his damnedest not to tote and lift, getting grumpier by the hour. With warmer weather, the crossing was expecting a surge starting the next day, Thursday afternoon, and extending for 10 days. They were getting ready. Even Frank was smart enough to be scarce on Wednesdays, knowing he could be put to work. Yard work done, Enid gone home to her husband and Tom to his kids. Cal grilled fish fillets with an aluminum foil packet full of green veggies, and the three of them ate at a table on the porch so they could mind the store if any of the few campers who were still around needed something. When dinner was finished, Cal went off to his cabin to shower, while Sully headed for the house with Bo to catch a little of the news on TV. Maggie stayed at the store until closing, which she'd do as soon as cleanup was complete. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the lake, when Maggie was on the front porch wiping off the tables. An old, mud-splattered, rusty black pickup was parked down the road near the lake. It looked like 3 people sat in the cab. She leaned on her rag on the table and peered in its direction. 2 men flanking a small blonde woman. Not campers, not locals. She hadn't seen the truck before. 2 big men and a small woman made shivers go up her spine. The truck began to slowly inch toward the store, and when it neared, she saw the 2 men were scruffy-looking strangers to her. Put between them, wearing a frightened expression, sat Chelsea Smith. Where was her family? Had they sent her to get help for some reason? The driver parked at the side of the store, and Maggie tried to concentrate on her wiping up. She wouldn't give away her concern in case something was wrong. Wrong? Wrong? Wrong. The men talked for a moment, and then the passenger got out of the truck. All she knew for sure was that the men looked creepy and Chelsea looked scared. The man who approached the front porch was dirty and unkempt, not a strange look around a campground. Locally, there were fishermen, hunters, ranchers, also frequently messy and disheveled. His pants were baggy and dirty, his boots had seen better days, and his beard was scraggly. But it was the look in his dark eyes and the rather large hunting knife holstered in leather at his belt that cautioned her, so she smiled. "How you doing?" she asked, with a friendly smile. "How long is Cal's damn shower going to take?" "Yeah. You got beer?" She nodded. "Draft or 6-pack?" She glanced at the truck out of the corner of her eye, and the fact that Chelsea hadn't moved over near the passenger door once the first man got out told Maggie all she needed to know. 6'll do." "Right in the cooler," she said, standing back so he could enter the store. He was waiting right inside the door. He looked at her over his shoulder. "Over there," she said, pointing. He smelled, but not of ranching or fishing. He smelled of body odor, greasy food, gasoline and smoke. Not wood smoke, but probably tobacco smoke. And the way he looked at her, it was the most threatened she'd felt in a long time. They'd had a patient go postal in the ER once, and that had scared her enough to pee her pants, but security got him under control quickly. There was no security team here. She went behind the counter by the cash register, wondering if he was going to rob her and cut her up into little pieces. The broom was within her reach if he got too close or pulled out that knife, but he put the 6-pack on the counter and took out a wallet he kept on a chain. Then he looked over at the bar. "Get me one of them bottles," he commanded. "Whiskey." "We don't sell..." She stopped herself. What was she thinking? "We don't usually sell by the bottle, but you're probably my last customer for the day. I'm closing up in 10. She went across the aisle to grab a bottle of Jack Daniels from under the bar and took it back to the cash register. She had a thought. It might be a stupid thought, but Maggie usually assessed and made decisions quickly, and it was the only thought she had. She knew he was wrong, and she didn't want him wandering back into the vast wilderness and doing harm to Chelsea. She began ringing up the purchase. "You passing through?" "More or less," he said. "I got 2 empty cabins if you want it to be less," she said. "Fact is, middle of the week, hardly anyone's around, so we lower the price if it's one night. $12. I can't do that for more than one night. Can't do that on weekends, you know." We stay full on weekends, in good weather. Stop chattering, she told herself. Her knees felt liquid. If Cal would have just walked through the back door, maybe she'd come up with a better idea. You can park around the back of the cabin if you want to. He looked at her suspiciously. It looked like he was onto her. He turned from the counter as if to leave, but instead he brought back an armload of snack food, chips, pretzels, jerky, nuts. He piled it all on the counter. Add it up. Give me the key on that cabin. She rang everything up, gave him the total, and he handed her a credit card. The credit card belonged to Gilbert Anthony Smith. Wrong, wrong, wrong. She ran it, and it showed approved on the machine. She turned and grabbed the key, slapped it on the counter, and said, You don't need a receipt, do you? Why? Most people don't, she said with a shrug. You can't deduct supplies unless you're on business. He sneered at her, like he was on business. She bagged up his things, and he left the store. Maggie sank behind the counter, her knees useless. She heard the truck start and motor slowly around the store along the drive that led to the cabins. No one had reported Mr. Smith's card stolen, or the machine wouldn't have approved it. That was a good sign, wasn't it? Or maybe the card was taken off his body. Or were they tracking it? Oh God, how long had that child been with those two? Shaking, she reached for the phone to call 911. She identified herself to the dispatcher and tried to calmly explain. Two creeps in their 30s just checked into one of the cabins with a 14-year-old girl I know was here with her family last week. They were camping here. Her name is Chelsea Smith, and I believe she may have been abducted. Was the girl in distress, ma'am? The dispatcher asked. She looked terrified. Never mind, I'll call Stan. She disconnected and dialed Stan's cell phone. Yellow, he said thickly, like his mouth was full of dinner. Stan, there's a kidnapped juvenile and two creeps have her, and I gave them a cabin. Need help, fast. He coughed and spit. Jesus, Maggie, the Smith girl? Yes, I just called 911 and the dispatcher asked me if the girl was in distress. You know about this? Where is her family? The family reported her missing. The bulletin went out a few hours ago, earlier today. They're searching for her. She walked away from the group to answer nature and didn't come back. She's here. I recognize her. She's with two creepy guys in a dirty old muddy truck. Where'd she go missing? Northwest of Leadville in the mountains. They aren't looking this far south. They thought she was lost, but started exploring abduction just lately, he said. One of the men used her father's credit card, Gilbert Smith. Please, hurry before they hurt that girl, if they haven't already. She heard the sound of Stan's movement, running, car door opening, huffing and puffing, like he was either at home for dinner or at a diner in town. Where are you? He shouted to Maggie. I'm in the store. I'm alone. Dad's in the house. Hardly any campers. I've got this shotgun. Maggie, no, he shouted. Don't you do anything. You lock yourself in the store and wait for me. Then she heard the car door slam, engine start, and Stan flipped on his siren to be en route fast. She listened while he radioed a variety of case numbers and emergency calls to everyone and their brother. She heard him call out, "In progress in Sullivan's crossing." "Maggie," he said, a little breathlessly. They armed? Gun in the rack and big hunting knife strapped on a belt. And Stan? They're big. She's just a little girl. Stay in the store. We're on the way. Then he tossed his phone proudly onto the seat next to him. She could hear him on the radio in the background, so he hadn't disconnected. She overheard keywords like SWAT, abduction, negotiation team, air support, dogs, armed and dangerous. She went to the storeroom for the shotgun. She loaded it, It held 4 rounds of small pellets, and she knew how to use it. It was loud, scary, and depending on where it was aimed, potentially deadly. But more to the point, it was probably not deadly, probably being the operative word. Where was Cal? Should she go find him? Maggie, Hermione asked, when was the last time you had to have a man to help you make a decision? Well, hell, Cal didn't seem to be in possession of a gun, and who knew if he'd ever fired one? He was a theme park employee. She grabbed a roll of duct tape out of the store. Maggie loved duct tape. It cured almost everything shy of an aneurysm. She'd even seen a maintenance guy slapping it along the leading edge of the wing of a 757 once. But if she had the chance, she was going to tape up the hands and feet of 2 bad guys. She stuffed it in her pocket and went out the back door. She had several concerns, all of which had her marching with a shotgun toward the closet cabin. Sully, she couldn't let him try to handle this. It could kill him. A few months ago, she would have turned it over to him, but not now. She could wait for Cal, but something told her he might try to reason with her, make her wait. And she knew that was coming. Law enforcement, complete with a negotiator. They would surround the cabin, and she was reminded of an emergency case years ago, her last year of residency, the victim. Oh God, what they could do to that girl in the time it took. What if they already have? She said to herself. Then they won't again, her mind whispered back. Ah, this was crazy. She stopped walking 10 feet from the cabin to ask herself essential questions. Could a frontal attack make this worse instead of better? They could shield themselves with the girl, but not both of them. She could shoot the other one if that happened. It could piss them off. Oh hell, they were already dangerous. My God, he bought snacks and liquor to enjoy while they did who knew what to that innocent girl. Maybe if the police, better equipped and experts in this sort of thing, had their chance, maybe no one would. But they weren't expecting her. If the police and SWAT teams surrounded that cabin, they'd have all the time in the world to plan how to defend themselves or hurt the girl. Then she heard Chelsea's scream fade into a sobbing cry, and Maggie couldn't stop herself. She marched to the front of the cabin and gave the door a mighty kick right at the latch. When it didn't open, she gave it another right away, and the door flew open. She fired a shot into the ceiling, and it made an earth-shaking blast, a thundering explosion. She barely had time to make out what was going on inside. One of the men was standing on the left side of the bed, crouched in a fighting position with that big hunting knife in his hand, while the other was moving off the bed toward something. The gun was leaning against the wall in the corner. His pants were open, and even though she didn't see Chelsea, she shot the man with the open pants, shot him below the chest, dropping him, screaming, to the ground. Then she swung her shotgun wide to aim at the second man, racking up the next round in a scary sound. That's when she saw Chelsea, crouched in the corner, her hands over her face. Run to the store, she said to the girl, then to the man. Put the knife on the floor, and I'll shoot you. Now. He backed away, palms toward her. She glanced at the first man, crying out in pain, crawling toward the rifle. So she fired at the wall behind him, and he scrambled away, back against the wall. You shot me in the dick, he screamed. You shot me. Well, that was fortunate, she thought. She'd been aiming for his head. Chelsea whisked past her through the door, and she heard lots of feet running. She imagined everyone within earshot was running toward her now. Lie on your stomach, flat, hands stretched out, she ordered the men. The one who'd been holding the knife did so immediately, but the other one, crying, curled up into a ball against the wall. She racked up her last round, and then Cal was behind her. She could smell him. Maggie, he said. Jesus. Protect the girl, she said. Take care of my father. Maggie, what did you do? Sully asked from behind her. I'll explain after these two are tied up. Cal, there's a roll of tape in my pocket. Stan and all the police in Colorado are on the way. Can someone please secure these men up so I don't have to shoot anyone again? For a while there was the sound of grunting, heavy breathing, and whimpering in that little cabin. Outside there was a lot of murmuring as campers had gathered around to see what was going on, though Maggie was not compelled to explain, other than to say the police were on their way. Then after about 5 minutes of that, the uninjured man began making excuses. We weren't going to do anything. That girl came along of her own. You can even ask her. If you just said something, you'd have been on our way. We got no cause to make trouble anywhere. Maggie, still holding her father's shotgun, snorted. They used her father's credit card in the store. She shot me. I'm dying, the wounded man cried. He's not bleeding enough to be dying, and he's not bleeding in the right places to be dying, Maggie said. Cal rose from his job of binding the men. He was glistening with sweat, and he was barely dressed. He must have just pulled on his jeans after his shower. Their weapons were tossed outside. One was bound face down, and the injured man was bound sitting up, leaning against the wall. He had splatters of blood on him, but nothing serious. Maggie was not about to give him a checkup. I'll be fine if you want to grab a shirt, she told Cal. I'm not leaving you here. In fact, I'd rather you give me that gun now. I know what I'm doing, she said. I know how to use it. I got that message, honey, he said, pulling it gently from her hands. I don't want you to use it too much, that's all. Why don't you go check on the girl? Sully and I will take over now. Thanks, she said, relinquishing the weapon. I'm worried about her. Will you two be all right? I got it, Sully said, picking up the man's rifle and checking to see that it was loaded. Go ahead. When she walked in the back door, Chelsea jumped off her stool at the counter and ran to her, throwing her arms around her. Honey, it's going to be okay. The police are on their way. My mom and dad, she asked through her sobs. I'm sure they'll be notified and either come here or meet you at the hospital or police station. Are you hurt in any way, honey? She shook her head against Maggie's shoulder, crying. Do you want me to take you over to the house? Do you want something to eat or drink? She leaned back and shook her head. I just want my mom and dad, she said. Maggie pulled her toward the kitchen. How'd you end up with those two, honey? They tricked me. One of them was crying for help right by the stream where I was filling my water bottle, and when I looked, one of them dragged me down the hill with a hand over my mouth. I couldn't even scream. I lost my whole pack. She started to tremble and sob again, clinging to Maggie. One of them used your dad's credit card, Maggie said. It was in my pocket, she said. I've had it in my pocket since we were here. I used it to pay for stuff here. It was an extra. My mom had hers. My dad said hold on to it, keep it safe. When I saw that card, I knew you had been kidnapped, Maggie said. So, it did the trick. Did you really shoot that man in the, Nah, Maggie said. I just shot him where I thought I could stop him and do the least damage. He's fine. They're just pellets. They hurt and sting, but he'll live. He'll need a few stitches, and that's all. He's going to jail. Finally, the sound of distant sirens. A helicopter neared. A few minutes later, there were cops everywhere, though Sully had called Stan to tell him Maggie had rescued the girl and that Chelsea was safe. Along with law enforcement, they got fire and rescue, and, as could be predicted, they made a mess of things with their big trucks and heavy equipment. It was completely dark, but with a nice big moon lighting up the property, and boy, were the police pissed at Maggie. She had specifically defied Stan's orders. What the hell were you thinking? Stan raged. You could have killed somebody. You could have hurt that little girl. I took that into consideration, she said. If she'd gotten hurt, I could still do some damage to them and get her out. but no one was going to die from Sully's old shotgun. Noisiest piece of gun in the West, I think, she said. Scared him. That's what I want. You could have been killed. Those big old bad guys could have walked right through that shot and killed you dead. While I was doing my best, at least, she said. Leave her be now, she said. What she had to do. She did what she had to do, Sully said. You're going to sit outside and listen to a little girl scream? It's okay, Dad, she said. Let them get it off their chest. You can go to the house and rest. This has been a strain on you. You think I'm likely to miss any of this? He said. You could have been killed, Maggie, Stan persisted. Yeah, but I thought there was a better chance they'd never anticipate me coming at them with a shotgun. So, look, I shot the ceiling, hoping to scare them and hold a gun on them until police arrived. But they were going for their weapons, and I was without a choice. From there, she had to sit at one of the tables on the porch with her dad and Cal and police detectives. Her interview recorded while crime scene people examined the cabin where the shooting took place. They confiscated all the weapons, including Sully's, the truck, and everything else that belonged to the men. While the police made it very clear they did not approve of the action she'd taken, they also conceded that with one holding a knife and the other reaching for his gun, it was self-defense. They weren't inclined to arrest her, but they did tell her to stay at the camp and not to leave without notifying Stan. Are there any charges pending? Cal asked the detective. The file is not closed, he answered, but so far I haven't seen any evidence that would warrant arrest. Still, the investigation is not quite over. A while later, a paramedic she'd known for about 10 years, Conrad Boyle, Connie for short, came up on the porch. He grinned at her. Nothing to worry about, Maggie, he said, except the one that got hit. He says he's gonna sue you. Tell him to get in line, she answered somewhat bitterly. No good deed ever goes unpunished. He's gonna be fine. They're twins. You know that? Bert and Bud from the Wet Mountain Valley area, back in the hills. I'm just guessing, but I bet they're pretty well known back in those trees. Thanks, Connie. You need anything before we haul out of here? Got a Valium? She asked. I'll have to check you. Call ER, write it up. You don't have one? You don't have one? Forget it, Connie, she said. After everyone gets out of here, maybe I'll have a drink or something. He grinned at her. I don't care what anyone says. Good on you, Maggie. You probably saved that girl's life. Thanks, Connie. An hour and a half later, the grounds finally quiet. Law enforcement and rescue gone. Maggie had a nice, hearty whiskey blend over a couple of ice cubes out on the porch with Cal. Sully had gone to bed, but she was still way too wired and spooked. She could tell that while the grounds were quiet, people were still awake. She could see the glow of fires in the dark night. She heard the gentle murmurs of talking. She wasn't the only one afraid to close her eyes on the night. Just one question, Cal said. What made you storm that cabin? Without help, without backup of any kind? She took a sip of her drink. There was an emergency case I remembered years ago when I was a senior resident in trauma. It was a victim the police couldn't get to. The apartment was surrounded by SWAT, uniforms, dogs, negotiators, and medical. There was only one entry, and it took hours while the suspect held the victim with a gun. After hours of trying, in an act of life-threatening heroism, one officer breached the apartment through a hole in the wall and eliminated the suspect. He was a young SWAT officer with a family who braved death to save an innocent, and he was too late. Not only had the victim been assaulted for hours, she was critical from a gunshot wound to the head when they finally got in. She was pregnant. It was a tragedy of huge proportions, and we couldn't save her. I thought maybe stupidly that I had a chance in this case. I thought I might have to kill them to get Chelsea out, but I also thought if I fired one round and they gave up, I would have to kill them and maybe could save her before any more damage was done. You weren't scared? He asked. Of course, I must have been. Don't you even know? He asked. She smiled contritely. If I let being scared stop me from doing what I think I have to do, I wouldn't get far, would I? He shook his head and laughed. You were lucky, he said. You might be an ace in the operating room, but in this, you were lucky. Let's not do that again, all right? I hope to never do that again, she said. God, I must have gone mad. I don't put the bullets in. I take them out.